Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. It is the Chennai Grand Masters for 2026, round one of what looks to be an awesome tournament. We had the preview yesterday where I made some and already I'm beginning to sweat that I'm thinking they're wrong. We have some awesome matchups. We have Hans Niemann versus Nodirbek Abdusattorov. We have Dmitry Andreikin versus the madman Arjun Erigaisi. We have Alireza Firouzja versus Pranash M. And we have an all-Indian matchup in Nihal Sarin versus Gukesh. We're going to with Hans versus Nodirbek. Nodirbek getting the white pieces. He began with D. Hans played C6, E6. We had knight to f3, with obviously Nodirbek looking to avoid any kind of Nimso Indians. We had then d5 from Hans, knight to c3, and now bishop to b4. And this is one of the main lines. If you'll excuse me, this is the Rogozin defense. We have now queen a4 check, which forces knight to c6, and now e3. Short castles, queen back to c2. It looks very silly, but this knight is probably not best placed on c6, so you have forced black to do that. We get rook to e8, bishop to d2, now breaks the pin. We get here a6, and here a couple of ideas present themselves. If you'll excuse me, I accidentally shifted this. So we have here, and now a couple of ideas present themselves. You either have the move pawn a3, or you have bishop e2. Those are kind of two key ideas. There is, of course, this idea to play rook d1, which has been played. But if we go to the main game, we get bishop to e2, which is an inaccuracy. Pawn a3 is the most common move, but bishop e2, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Remember, the time control is 90 plus 30, so the players haven't spent a great deal of time thinking just yet. Nodirbek a little bit more than Hans. Hans now spends a couple of minutes, plays bishop d6, short castles, pawn takes, bishop takes, and now the move b5. And the idea is the bishop will retreat somewhere, and then now you're going to get the easy move bishop to b7. And Hans has kind of got himself into a decent position here. We get bishop back to e2, and now bishop b7. Now, which move do you go for here? Do you play the move a3 or do you play the move a4? One of the moves is good, one of the moves is a little bit suboptimal. a4 is the move that is played, and it is inaccurate. Why? a3 is better. It does allow e5, this break, but you've got the move like bishop d3. Notice how the bishop has to go back to d3, so maybe bishop e2 wasn't the best retreating move. We get e takes, and now b4 is arriving. And the idea is the knight's going to land there, it's going to grab one of the bishops, and Hans Niemann is just going to have the bishop pair. So a4 is not the greatest idea, reason being, b4 comes immediately. The knight has to move to the center, and now we get takes, and now look at this. This discovery, now the knight can get in, you hit like this, and so it's a very uncomfortable position. We get queen back to c2, and now it looks really tempting to play a move like b3. We're going to see if it is thought out. We first play the move rook to c8, guarding this. Not necessarily guarding it, but now maybe preparing a c5 push. And Hans Niemann is better. He's also up 10 minutes on the clock. So he has got a very impressive position. So, Nodirbek brings his rook a d1, and now we get the move f5. Little bit weakening on here, but you can't actually get anything on that diagonal at the moment. So, it's a move that's perfectly fine for Hans. We get queen b1, stepping out of the c-file. Potentially, you may even want to step to a2, but then again, this is always coming as a problem. Bishop to e4, now queen a2, bishop d5. No, we don't repeat moves. Rook a8. Rook a8. It's very tempting to repeat moves, but you're not actually gaining anything. So leave your bishop in the center. The rook moves to a8, which looks a bit interesting, but it's because this is now hanging, and you want to leave your bishop here. So now we get knight e1. You know you've got a bad position when you're forced to play a move like knight e1, which just kind of seems to do nothing. We get queen d7. Now look at this. We orchestrate a trade of bishops. No trade of bishops. That rook looks trapped. Kind of is. You have to take the rook that's hanging on the other side of the board. Takes. And now you can try and interpose with a move like knight here, but we're just going to leave the rook hanging. The thing is, this move doesn't work. Queen takes 4 is a huge because they play a move like F. Bishop A2 comes in. You play Queen C1, and now probably just some bishop, and you're tied in knots. And eventually, you're just gonna have to give back the material. So there's no point trying to hang on to it. So we get this. The knight goes out to F3, and now we get Queen takes A4 anyway because that rook is not going anywhere. Although Hans Niemann is just like Rook E1 looks perfectly fine. But we go for E4. We're trying to break out the queen because that is the big problem that I'm facing. Takes, rook takes. Now the queen comes back, but Nodirbek Abdusattorov seems to be getting everything right. He gets B3, and now Hans Niemann is presented a choice of knight moves. One is good, one is bad. He plays knight takes D2 and gives away just about all of the advantage he'd managed to accrue. It was a really tough position, but yeah, it just doesn't quite work. Knight takes D2. And now, even though you've got A5 and Hans Niemann is up a pawn in terms of advantage, in terms of just material, he's just up a pawn, and he's got a 2-on-1 here. Nodirbek looks like he's about to win stuff back and to open lines and to finally activate his position that was so passive. He gets the knight to C4, it hits the bishop, it hits the pawn, the bishop retreats but now takes. Queen takes, we swap the queens off, and now we bring the rook to A1, and you're never going to win this position as Hans Niemann, or you shouldn't. He's going to try. He would win it against me 10 out of 10 times, 100 out of 100 times, but even though Nodirbek gives up a second pawn, he brings the king to the center, there's a check, and ultimately what is going to end up happening is, for the moment, he's up 2 pawns. But Nodirbek can win this back, can kind of safeguard everything. He picks this up. Yes, you give that away, but you pick this up. The more pawns get liquidated, the more likely this is going to be a draw. He now gets a tempi on the bishop. He now gets his knight in. And after bishop to F8, I believe the players agreed to a draw. Hans Niemann pushed Nodirbek as much as he could with the black pieces. He had a real half chance, but ultimately it wasn't to be. You're never going to win this. You're not able to create enough threats, and ultimately you don't quite have enough. Next game, Dmitry Andreikin versus Arjun Erigaisi. Erigaisi with the white pieces, and he will fancy himself in this game. He's got white against one of the lower-rated players in the thing. It was an Italian game, that's why I'm just kind of pressing forward. Arjun well into his preparation. It was an interesting Italian, if we go back several moves. It's an interesting Italian because we get this position, which is pretty common. This move is fine. Bishop e7 is not always played. Sometimes you get bishop to c5. Those are kind of the two developing moves. And now knight to c3 is not always played. Generally in the Italian game, you put your knight here because you play the move c3 looking for d4. But when the knight goes here, now all you're looking to do is fight for this particular square. And once this move is played, we play a3. So that now if the knight tries to come out this way, you can always retreat. We get castles. Bishop to d2, which is always interesting. You're never sure where you want that bishop to go. Sometimes it goes to d2, sometimes it goes to e3, and sometimes it goes to g5. We got a5, h3, now preventing the pin. Bishop to e6, offering the trade. We put the knight in the middle. You've got to be careful because if you take with the bishop, you give up the bishop. If you take with the knight, you get forked. So you've got to be really careful. We get a4, just taking space. Short castles, now h6, so there is no bishop to g5. Or knight to g5 for that matter. Rook to e1, rook to e8, and now b4. A typical move in the Italian. What are you going to do? You're going to take en passant or you're going to leave it. We take en passant pawn takes, not bishop takes. The bishop drops to f8, now no longer able to be captured. And we play the move b4. Arjun has thought a little bit up until this point. Knight drops back to b8, which looks really silly, but also the knight doesn't always go to f6 in all these positions, or it does, but this isn't an uncommon move. It's also played in several Spanish positions because you actually want to put the knights here and potentially here or on f8 to go here. Maybe potentially once this fianchettos or something like that. So really maneuvering game. We get now takes, and now bishop to c3, offering the exchange of light squared bishops. But if black does this, white gets a really good clamp on d5. Now, so we get knight d7, a4, c6, a5, knight back to b8. I don't know what the plan is for that knight. But the thing is, as black, what do you do here? What do you do? It's a really difficult position because if you want to, like, fianchetto, that's fine, but the bishop might want to redeploy out that way. Your knight has now had the option of going to b6 and threatening the bishop taken away from it, and it can't go here because the queen's here. You might want to play a move like queen e7 or queen d8, but obviously Andrejkin has a plan with knight back to b8. We swap off the bishops. We get d4, so white's getting everything they want. But now look at this. Just in the nick of time, knight to a6. And it is causing just enough problems. You can't really attack it because I take. And if you take here, this is going to become destabilized at some point. So, rook to e3. Now, bishop e7, rook to b1, bishop to f6, and now b5. Knight to c7, b6, knight to b5. Look at this. Counterattack on the queen. But does that work? Takes. Takes queen. There's something missing here? Did Erigaisi blunder? No. We don't allow that capture sequence. We just allow all of these trades. And now Andrejkin has solved all of his problems. He's got one final problem to calculate. Does he play the move e4 or does he play the move rook a6 to kind of blockade everything? One move is best, one move is suboptimal. He played the move rook a6, which is suboptimal. It looks like the best move because you permanently blockade this, you could double up and put massive amounts of pressure, but probably e4 is the best way to kind of liberate all of your pieces and get things moving. That's probably the best way to go about it. Knight d2, and now rook c8, and now it is Erigaisi who has a chance to really capitalize on his advantage. He's got like a +1 advantage rather. And now he's got a choice of queen a4 or rook c1, offering a rook trade. He plays rook c1, offering a rook trade. And Andrejkin's out the woods. If he plays a move that looks kind of silly. So he takes, which is the best move. There is a way here for him to try and get away with this. Rook c4. And the idea is you play rook c2. Never mind. Sorry, you do not do this at all because that just hangs a rook. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing here. Anyway, rook c1 inaccurate. We get this swap off. The bishop pins the knight, but you just step out of the pin. You completely forego the knight. But what would happen is probably at least this capture, which traps the rook. Not to mention you've probably got like a rook f3 and so on. So we get takes here, traps the rook, but there's a check, and now we take, but there is a perpetual check at minimum for Andrejkin, and he gets it, or rook d1, and on move 42, they agree to a draw. So Arjun may be missing half a chance, but one of these men didn't miss half a chance. Alireza Firouzja versus Pranash M. e4, c5, a Sicilian defense. We get knight to c3, a closed Sicilian, and you don't always see this at the top level. It does kind of transpose into a 4-knight Sicilian, so I don't know, maybe Pranesh was looking to avoid certain openings by going for this move order, but we get a very interesting opening. We've kind of transposed into, well, it says the Lasker Pelican variation, but I think this is not too far away from a Kalashnikov or a Sveshnikov, so it is very, very interesting. We get you knight d5, takes, and if you go in the database, by the way, all the top games, all of them, are Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiana Caruana from 2018. All of them. The top 4 games in the Lichess database are the classical games featuring Magnus Carlsen and Fabiana Caruana from their World Championship match in 2018. That's why I'm pretty sure it was a Kalashnikov by transposition. Literally, a lot of this was played. They're now kind of out of the realm of that World Championship match in particular, but, I mean, the top game is still 2025 Nilis Grandiolis versus Ricard Rapport. So, hardly out of opening theory. The players, Alireza Firouzja here, for the first time thought, on move, what is this? 13, when he decides to put his knight back on f8. Because he sees this coming and he probably doesn't want to commit to h5. Which is interesting. So he puts his knight back on f8. Now, no games in the database. No one thought about this. We get a5, knight d7, bishop to e3, and short castles, queen d2. Alireza is probably slightly better. He's down 5 minutes on the clock, but he's probably slightly better. We get b5, takes, knight takes. Pranesh gets to put his knight in the center, but now queen c7, and white probably just has one too many problems. You've got a problem that your king is still very weak. You've got a problem that black has opened lines and these pawns are going to be very weak. And you've weakened your light squares this side, so even if you castle short, your king is not safe, and this pawn is a weakness. And the more you've tried to push pawns to defend it, the more weaknesses you're going to create. Black is fine. This is black's biggest weakness, and maybe this one, because they're isolated. But this one is really, really well defended. This bishop's not moving. You can always bring a rook. It is a little bit more difficult to solve all of white's problems, and I think that is the biggest thing that Pranesh has to come up with. He plays c4, but now I get bishop f5, it hits the knight. Knight is defended rather than moved, and now knight takes. Alireza just wins a pawn. Queen pins, but I bring a rook. And you can bring the other rook. I take the bishop. It looks absolutely ridiculous that you can get away with this, but Alireza does. Alireza does. Queen takes, rook takes, you take my rook. I take this pawn. Alireza Firouzja gives up the exchange. He's down a rook for a piece, for a bishop, a dark squared bishop, but he's got 2 extra pawns. This is a weak king, and this is a weak pawn. And these are not the strongest pawns in the world. He has got this, and he has got this. He's got 2 clean pass pawns, or this could become a clean pass pawn if you win this. And he's just down a rook. And by the way, the rook he's down is still chilling on h1. It's got a couple of moves before it gets into the game. So, rook comes into c6. He brings the knight out. He plays d5. He takes, and now he plays rook b8. And all of a sudden, after everything's exchanged, Alireza Firouzja still maintains a minuscule advantage, according to the engine. The engine would probably draw this in versus an engine, but this is a really difficult endgame, and now it is minus 0.8, and now Pranesh has a choice of 2 king moves. One is good, one, of course, is bad. And he plays the wrong one, an inaccuracy, and now e4 comes. This rook moved to h3 for some reason. It's stuck there. This is a problem. You can't even get it back to h2. You have to go back to h1 if you want this rook in the game. Because rook b2 is a problem. It's a skewer anytime you go to h2. So you can play g4 and now the rook is liberated. Only for a moment. You've got a choice if rook moves again. Do you double or do you offer an exchange? What do you do? Pranesh looks to double. And d4 hits him. You would think, score, this is a fork. This probably, because you're forced to trade rooks. And, now I'm just going to, and I start eating all of your pawns. And this is not quite fast. My rook will do the damage. That's when the power of the rook is really shown. Rook hc3, though, loses because of d4. And that is a cold, cold shower. Because you can't trade rooks yet. You have to move. And now this is check. And now this is check. And now Alireza minus 3.3 as a choice. He chooses slightly inaccurately. But ultimately, he's going to win this game. He's just pushed through his past pawns. So this A pawn never mattered. Because he had 2 really well supported central pawns. And now what are you doing? Check. King moves. Hits the rook. The rooks get put together. And there is a threat here of like a repetition. So you have to do this in the right way. Rook f1, check, step away, we pick up the knight, check. Promotion, and now it is a rook endgame. And the engine loves this for black. I don't know why. Alireza is only up a pawn. If all three of these and all three of these disappeared. This is a draw. I'm guessing it is because you have the immediate move of like rook here and you're able to cause immediate problems. And now you can play rook d4 and white has a choice. You can be passive, play rook f3 and defend, or you can be aggressive and try to win stuff. Pranesh tries to be aggressive, but king d7 is a cold shower. You can go here, but I push, and you are not fast enough. I'm going to guard what I need, and that a-pawn is now going to win me the game. It's now going to win me the game. The central pawn's got me the advantage, but slowly, Alireza Firouzja grinds out an endgame, all Magnus Carlsen style, trades down. It should still, in theory, be a draw. But one pawn is enough when the king is cut off. Mistake here, but it didn't matter. In the end, it wouldn't have mattered. We pushed the pawn down. The king was cut off for so long, it couldn't get close enough. And the thing is, here, we go the wrong way. The king gets close enough, and we get to g2. And this is the end of the game, because I will give you a check. You will have to move, and I will promote. Alireza Firouzja wins. That leaves us the battle of the two Indian players, Nihal Sarin versus Gukesh. We are waiting to see what the world champion will bring. Nihal Sarin invites a very interesting game with a Pirc defense. We get a main line kind of thing here from the Pirc. Been played a lot. Yeah, it was main line pretty much. Not much to say in terms of the opening. It wasn't unique. Pirc is always interesting. It's always interesting when players voluntarily take the bishop on h6. I suppose that is the one interesting thing to mention. But we're going to have to wait just a wee bit. Like, Nihal Sarin actually didn't have an unpleasant position. Like, the engine favored him for a little bit. It thought he'd more than equalized. He sacrificed the pawn. Look at this move. He just willingly gives the pawn up. But it's because he can go here and now cause Gukesh some problems. And look at the time. This is the biggest thing. 23 moves. Gukesh is down over 30 minutes. 31 minutes on the clock. Obviously, Nihal Sarin will make his next move. How do you play chess 30 minutes down on the clock? In a classical game, when you've got 90 minutes, a third of your time you are down on the clock. So we get takes. Now the queen swings in. But now look at this, d4. That looks like a fork. Miraculously, Gukesh saw this and got his knight out the way. So now if you take the rook, you lose this and probably that. So you've got to do this carefully. We bring the queen back. Takes, and now the rook steps out the way to e2. And the reason I kind of rushed through this game is ultimately this will be a draw. This is not the same rook endgame that Alireza Firouzja had, mainly because he was up a pawn for most of it. Neither of these two players are up a pawn. All the pawns are exactly the same. And you try as you might, you will never get this. So on move 47, the two players agreed to a draw. Look, Nihal Sarin brought an interesting opening in terms of the Pirc. With it's always interesting. It can lead to dynamic positions. This just wasn't one. They played a bit of opening theory here. We got a couple of that central exchange, so there wasn't a lot of tension. And then ultimately, Nihal Sarin here, I think this is what signaled to me was going to be a draw. Gukesh is down 47 minutes. There's ways to try and complicate the position, but ultimately he just decided to take this. After 10 minutes of thought, play bishop e6. And look at this, Gukesh was down, so what's that? That's 60 plus 16, 76 minutes versus 47. A lot of time. Gukesh was down a lot of time. So maybe Nihal Sarin could have tried to find something else. He sacrificed the pawn and looked to kind of be creating a few things. But Gukesh manages to kind of get out of the woods for the slight problems that Nihal Sarin managed to cause him. And he gets out of this with a draw. He did have the white pieces, so you would have thought he could have maybe applied a bit of pressure. But Nihal Sarin was well prepared. Obviously, Gukesh had to think to get out of the woods. And 47 moves, and they made a draw. So, after one round, everyone is tied for second, except Pranesh, who is last, and Alireza, who is first. He won the game. So he's got half a point lead. That is all of it for round one of the Chennai Grand Masters for 2026. And then I will see you tomorrow for round two. And we'll see how my predictions will go from there. If you want to see them, it will be either linked in the description or you can just go into the channel and find it. Yeah. Cheers.